Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Chris May. The election of Barack Obama as our 44th president also brought new Democratic members to Congress, some from what have long been Republican districts. Among them, Congressman John Adler, who represents New Jersey's 3rd District. He is a member of the House Financial Services Committee and the Committee of Veterans Affairs. Congressman, good to have you back on Newsmakers.
Chris, thanks. Great to be back.
Thanks for being with us today. You have moved from the Cherry Hill Town Council to a long-time stint in the Senate in Trenton and now to the House of Representatives. What has the experience been like for you these first few months?
Well, it's certainly a thrill. Every time I look at the Capitol, see that beautiful dome, know what it represents to America's history and to America's future. I understand the privilege of trying to represent my wonderful district in New Jersey and to try to make our country safe and strong and prosperous.
You were our guest here on Newsmakers back in August during the heat of the campaign. You told me then that you believed the federal government had lost touch with the American people. Do you believe that the government remains out of touch with the people, Congressman?
Well, I think we saw what happened in Wall Street as a terrible sign of government not doing its job, not protecting us from the greed of some folks on Wall Street who lost sight of what they were supposed to be about, and their greed forced prices down for stocks, for bonds, really hurt all of our life savings. We've seen our housing prices drop. And I think the government's now trying to inject itself properly in a role to help give us confidence in our stock markets, our bond markets, our other credit markets, so that our economy can grow once again the way it so well has done in the past.
You actually did tell me back in August that you didn't like the idea of the government bailing out those who had made bad mistakes. We have seen the government intervene with the automakers, with the banking industry. Are you comfortable with the level of government intervention in the private sector right now?
Well, I was opposed to the bank bailout. I thought some of those banks had made just egregiously bad decisions, and the taxpayers of America shouldn't be on the hook rewarding those bad decisions. Similarly with General Motors, I think that company for a lot of years has neglected very clear market indications that we had to build cars more efficiently, and to see the government intervening with lots of money, $11 billion I think in the case of GM, I think that's off target long term. And I think we have to let markets do what they do well, let capitalism do what it does well, and sometimes that involves failure. It's not just guaranteed success. And I think taxpayers shouldn't be on the hook for all these things. Banks are going to have to fix their own problems to some large degree, and same with General Motors.
In fact, you did vote for a resolution calling on the Congress not to fund the bank bailout. You had to be disappointed that it went the other way.
I think we have an obligation to look out for the little guy, not to look out for these big banks. And I think we were off target when we're bailing out the big investment banks and not looking out for households throughout New Jersey and across the country.
In the big picture of spending, you did vote for the stimulus bill, $787 billion. You voted for a $31 billion expansion in the children's health insurance program, also the president's $3.6 trillion spending plan. How can we as a nation continue to afford going on spending like this, Congressman? Does there have to be a time where we say enough is enough?
Chris, it's a great question. There's a short-term answer and there's a long-term answer. The short-term answer is our economy was like a patient that needed to be defibrillated. It just needed to have an electric shock, and that meant having the government put money in where the private sector was not putting money in. By and large, private sector folks were holding back. We're not investing in new companies. We're not investing in our markets. So the stimulus plan, by and large, is like defibrillating a patient to try to get it to come back to life. As the economy starts to grow again, government's got to back out very substantially from the investments it's now making and let the private sector do what it has done well historically, but sort of stop doing over the last year. So I have real concern in the long term, government's got to back out a lot. And while I voted for short-term spending, that was to save an economy that was really struggling. Long term, the economy's got to save itself, and the government's got to get out of its way.
As things stand now, we're looking at doubling the national debt in 5 years, tripling it in 10 years. How do we pull back from that in time?
We're going to have to start ratcheting back a lot of these spending plans that make sense short term. We're going to have to wind down our war in Iraq, where I think we've been generally successful in getting the parties to come to the table and try to act like a civilized country. But a lot of these programs, we're going to have to sort of get cost controls. We have to get some control on our health care budgets for our country. We know that's such a burden on businesses, big business, and particularly small business, driving a lot of people into an uninsured situation that's very bad for families and very bad for our national economy. So bit by bit, America's going to have to retrench in terms of government spending, let the private sector do what it does well.
Two priorities.